Let's speak further about Advocate Shamila Batohi's appearance before the Ad Hoc Committee in Parliament and what's come out of the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry today with security expert and former Interpol ambassador Andy Mashaile. Always good to have you on the program, so welcome back. Let's start with Advocate Batohi. Has she inspired confidence, do you think, in her handling of the various issues raised about the NPA in relation to the allegations of criminal interference or just flat out abuse of the system?
She didn't do herself well. She tried some sparkling colors, but you could tell from the responses of the members of the committee, and there was dissatisfaction, hence pressuring her. But long story short, Tembekile, systemic weaknesses underlined by incompetencies in the process, and also the issue of resources, as we listened to her just before the wrap-up, that IDEC does not have resources that it needs to do. And folding this up, collapse IDEC into Office of Public Integrity against corruption, the OPIEC, the new office that's going to be established, yes.
So whose fault is it ultimately that the NPA generally, and indeed IDEC, which is set up with a specific mandate of tackling corruption, that they both complain about the same thing overall, a lack of skill as well as other resources that would enable them to deliver on their mandates?
The buck stops with the boss. The buck stops with the head, with her, from a resource congregation and galvanization for the results that we're looking for. And when the buck stops with her, she would then have to strangle whoever is the executive authority for the resources for her to have a successful tenure in office, which translates into crime being prevented, crime being combated, crime being detected, and out of that process, people being arrested and sent to jail, and the assets of those who have committed crime and by corruption and many other ways, those assets being confiscated, being registered to the state, and being used by the state for the same purpose of crime prevention, crime combating, and crime detection.
And there's a feeling amongst some of the members of parliament that Advocate Batohi should have perhaps, to paraphrase, been better prepared in terms of the information that she was or was not able to confirm on the spot. Just two examples. She couldn't give an accurate figure in terms of the conviction rate, for example, that the NPA has been able to produce based on the cases brought forward by the Political Killings Task Team, as well as in the last while, suspensions, the tenure of some people, even within the prosecuting authority and IDEC itself. For instance, the issue of Andrew Chauke, who was recently, in September, in fact, suspended by the president while an inquiry into his fitness to hold office is then allowed to run its course. Did she fail herself on those two things in particular? And is it fair to have expected that she should have come forward with the granular detail at hand to respond on those issues?
Tembekile, it is unfair on her, and also the flip side of the coin, she is supposed to be the custodian of the whole process, especially from a cost and benefit analysis point of view, Tembekile. You are supposed to tell those people who are your employers, parliament, you are supposed to give them the benefits of paying you meaning the whole NPA through the budget and many other ways of funding her. She's supposed to have known better than she performed. And this Tembekile, I have seen it in many instances. When we go into inquiries, we go there lightly, believing that the people who are sitting across us don't understand the modus operandi of the organizations that we represent. I have bent my fingers as many years ago, Tembekile, going into inquiries and discussions, having it not looked into issues that would crop up and create problems for yourself and your integrity.
On the infiltration or alleged infiltration of the NPA by criminal elements, Advocate Batohi said it's fair to talk of individuals who have been accused of involvement in corruption, but not so much those who have been collaborating with syndicates. Would the latter be more difficult to prove?
It wouldn't be difficult to prove, Tembekile, because your investigations should be sharp, your team should be sharp, your leads should be sharp, your linkages should be sharp, and your expectation in terms of commanding and controlling the process, given the objectives that we set, time-bound or smart investigations that would lead to you knowing whether you are able to deliver or not to deliver, given the mandate of that specific project or of that specific mission that you are pursuing.
And I want to move on to the Ekurhuleni Metro Police Department because it's the centre of evidence that's been given at the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry here in Gauteng at the moment. And what's been laid out basically over the last 2 days by a former senior leader in the EMPD are these allegations of members in the office, including Julius Mkwanazi, the now suspended, by the way, figure within the office, people who are allegedly, according to Mr. Spies, involved in cases of murder, corruption, etc. What is it about, or in fact, how symptomatic is it, I wonder, of the rot at the more local levels of law enforcement in the country?
It's very prevalent. I hesitated for a few seconds. I wanted to start with an example of JMPD members who were arrested somewhere in the West End, allegedly for going to a place to rob. I'm sure it's some kind of a unit, and the local policing agency, SAPS, went there during the raid of those JMPD members, arrested them, took their firearms, kept them in jail for the week. I think it's 2 weeks back. And upon closer investigation, one picked up at court that there are these operations that are not sanctioned by general law enforcement agencies, including your local police stations, that end up in house robberies. So these things do happen. These things do happen, and it's a serious cause for concern.
Would I be on the money here, Andy, by saying that in fact that is where we as the people are most exposed then to the abuses of the allegedly corrupt figures? Because if policing and law enforcement don't work at station level or at the very local unit level, what hope is there for us who don't have access to a commissioner, to a minister?
Tembekile, it's heartbreaking, it's scary, it's a more serious cause. It's the core of the trust deficiency trust deficit between the police and the ordinary members of the community. Just today, there's an old lady who called me to connect him with one of your sister radio stations because this particular old lady cannot get joy from the local police stations. I ended up having to give out the telephone numbers of the cluster commander or the district commander, as well as the provincial commissioner, so that this old lady must get relief. So, Tembekile, these are some of the serious and troubling and heartbreaking things, particularly when you grew up in an area and an old woman tells you she is not getting joy because the police are not helpful.
Andy Mashaile, very quickly before I let you go, if you can, the Palapala issue kept coming up in Parliament today. I wonder to what extent it falls into the mandate of the ad hoc committee, because the MPs were frustrated that Advocate Batohi could not give any real progress, if you will, on whether there's been a review. She says she's not, at the moment, in her office, seized with a review on the lack of prosecution in the matter, but the MPs feel that there should be more going on at an NPA level. Does it fall within the mandate of the ad hoc committee?
It would fall in the mandate if I am searching and creating doubt on your integrity and the integrity of your operations. I would go to an extent of pulling old files so that I can indicate to the South Africans that your office does not know what it is doing. When they were questioning her about the arrest of General Khumalo compared to Andrea Johnson, who sat in on the interview panel that interviewed the husband. And I could hear some of them saying, how fast are you going to arrest the head of IDEC? Because this matter is about human resources employment, just like in the issue of General Kumar.
And I think in response to that, she did say it was wrong for Advocate Johnson to have sat in that process, even though Johnson says at some point she recused herself when her husband appeared to advance. And Batohi also saying that ultimately it would depend on the evidence in each context. But for now, thank you so much for speaking to us, a security expert and former Interpol ambassador, Andy Mashaile, joining us on The Full View. By the way, we're waiting in the next about hour or so, if you will, for a resumption of proceedings in Parliament, where the Ad Hoc Committee members will continue to put questions to Advocate Shamila Batohi, the head of the public prosecution agency in the country.